It is by far the best time of year for a lot of reasons, and if you have needed some inspiration for creating your 2025 budget, this video is for you. I've been tracking every single dollar that I spend for like 3 or 4 years now. I've been doing this since college, and for the past couple of years, I've spent a lot of time like refining my system and honestly perfecting my system, in my opinion. My budgeting system and what works for me is super simple, so I don't spend a ton of time every single month budgeting. For the most part, I'm really only doing this process once, maybe twice a year, and then the rest of the time throughout the year is spent tracking my spending. Back in college, before I was doing this, I had no idea where my money was going. I felt like no matter how much I was increasing my income, I had no idea where my money was going, and I could never have any money left over to save and invest. So back in college, I started creating my own spreadsheet because I wanted something that was like super customized for me and something that I was going to be motivated to use every single week. And I have been refining that spreadsheet every single year until I got what is my budget spreadsheet today, which over 20,000 of you have downloaded, which is so crazy to me. But that's what I'm going to use to walk through this entire video today. I'll leave it in the description of this video. The 2025 version of my budget template does have an annual summary dashboard tab, which will be super helpful for you as you're like using the template throughout the year. You'll be able to see a year-to-date picture of exactly where your money has been going throughout the year. Before we get into creating our 2025 budget, we need to know how much money we spent in 2024. I know most people don't track every single dollar they spend, and when you're going to create a budget, you probably don't have this data, which is fine. It's definitely helpful to see exactly where your money went last year, but if you don't have that, I would at least recommend getting the last couple months worth of data. I talked about this and listed out exactly how to do this in my year-end money checklist video, so if you want to get all of your 2024 data, go check that video out. But because I tracked my spending super diligently in 2024, I do know exactly where my money went and exactly how much money I spent. So here it is. Here is my 2024 spending wrapped. Let's talk through where my money went and some areas that I potentially want to cut back in 2025. I'm not going to talk about this entire list, but I'll talk about some of the categories. The big one here is obviously rent. A big portion of my spending in 2024 obviously went to my rent, and I know how much money I spend on rent every single month, but still seeing it added up like this, it still seems like a crazy amount of money. Some areas that I am going to try to cut back in 2025 are my grocery spend. In 2024, I spent $4,952 on groceries, which was an average of $412 per month. I do feel like I can cut it back to around like $300 to $350 in 2025, so that is going to be a focus area for me. And then the other big one is moving. I spent over $10,000 this year moving down to Nashville. I've talked about this in a couple other of my videos. I moved from Pittsburgh to Nashville back in the summer, and I had a lot of moving related expenses. I am planning on moving back to Pittsburgh in the summer, so I am planning to have a lot of moving related expenses again this summer, which it is what it is. I don't regret the move down here at all, but it still was a big expense and contributed to my roughly $58,000 worth of spending in 2024. With that, let's get into my budgeting system and creating a budget for 2025. Now it's obviously time to create our 2025 budget. I just pulled up a blank version of my 2025 budget template, and I'm gonna walk you through this from start to finish. Like, we're gonna do this completely from scratch. Even though my budget didn't really change that much from 2024 to 2025, I still want to completely redo this. I feel like once a year is a good amount of time to kind of like reset and just like start over from scratch with your budget. So that's what we're gonna be doing, and I'll walk you through exactly how I do it. First, we're in the monthly budget planner tab of my budget template, and this is a really good place to start. We're gonna move from the budget planner into the budget setup tab here in a little bit, but I really like this budget planner because it gives you a space to just kind of like map out everything and see everything all in one tab without like scrolling down like you're going to see in the budget setup tab. Once we map out our kind of like monthly overview budget here, we're going to move into the budget setup tab so that we can account for some like monthly variations, but I'll walk you through exactly how I do it. First, I'm erasing all of the sample data here so that we have a blank planner to start with. And then first on the income, I am going to start putting in all of the income that I know I'm going to get on a monthly basis. I am salaried, so my salary every month comes out to $67.41. That's the net amount that I get into my checking account every single month. On top of that, I'm going to leave some other categories. So I'm going to leave a spot for distribution. This is essentially when I'm like withdrawing money from my business bank account. That's called a distribution. But if you got like a bonus or anything, you can put bonus here. And then I'll add a miscellaneous income category as well. I'm not going to like budget for any extra income, but if I do get like a tax return or a random like large gift throughout the year or something like that, I want a spot to be able to log that in the monthly tab. So I usually just leave like a miscellaneous bucket there. Then moving over to the needs, I'm going to start filling out some of the categories that I use in my needs budget. I put in all of my needs. Again, this is just kind of like a monthly overview, so we're not getting super specific on monthly variations here, but you can see that my needs come to roughly $3,250. Most of this is made up of my rent and then obviously some of my other like bills and stuff as well. I also include groceries and gas and utilities in the needs column, so this is what my needs budget looks like. As you're filling out this template, you can also see your budget percentage left and then the dollar amount that you have left, which is really nice. So once you move over to the one side, you can be like, okay, I still have 51% of my budget left and all of that. Now I'm going to go in and add all of the one subcategories. These are the categories that I use for the one side of my budget. I like to keep things pretty high level. I don't use like a ton of categories. One thing to know is that I always keep a miscellaneous category in both the need side and the one side of my budget. On the need side, I only keep 100 because there isn't that much that goes into here. But if I go to like the doctors and there's a copay, or if I have like, I don't know, any just random expenses that aren't necessarily fun expenses, I keep them there. And then on the one side, I keep $250 for my miscellaneous expense budget. This is anything like parking, Ubers, random like personal care items, just like anything that doesn't necessarily fit in another category. Debt, I don't have anything to list here because I became debt free at the end of 2023, which is super helpful for my budget. So I don't have anything to list here, but if you did have like a car payment or a student loan payment, you could list those in this section. And then we're gonna move over to the savings goals and the investing goals. And again, you can see your amount left here. So I'm working with roughly $2,200. And this is how I'm going to allocate that money, at least for the first half of 2025. On the savings side, if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I like to save for very specific things. I don't just like throw money into a savings account. I call these sinking funds. So I set up little buckets in my high yield savings account for very specific things. And that just helps so I know exactly what the money's there for. And when I need to go use that money, I don't feel guilty for using that money. I've talked about this in a couple other videos, but I am planning on buying a house when my lease is up in the summer. So a lot of my money over the next couple of months is going to be going to moving related expenses. I have the money sitting in a high yield savings account for the down payment and closing costs, so I don't need to save for that anymore, but I am going to be saving for things like moving and furniture and all of that. So I'm going to put a moving subcategory here, and we're gonna say $800 is going to that. And then the rest of that was just about me kind of playing around with the numbers to see where I want to allocate my savings and my investments, at least for the next couple of months. I increased the moving to $1,000, which I feel like will be really good if I do have money left over when I do buy the house after buying furniture and everything. Then obviously I can reallocate that money elsewhere, but I want to make sure I have enough money sitting aside for that. And then I always save every single month for both travel and for the holidays. So when I go take a trip, I have money sitting in a sinking fund to pay for the vacation, and then the holiday sinking fund when Christmas rolls around and I need to buy Christmas presents and holiday related things, I have money sitting there for that as well. And then for my brokerage account, it's my goal over the next couple of months to invest $500 a month into my brokerage account. This is outside of any retirement investments that I'm doing in my solo 401k, but I do try to invest every single month into my brokerage account as well, so that I have that money in my 30s or my 40s to do something with. The goal is to get this amount left down to close to zero. I typically like to leave a little bit of a buffer, maybe like $100 to $300 there, just in case I do go over my budget in any category. I don't have to really stress about it that much. Now that we've completed the budget planner, we're going to move over to the budget setup tab to copy all of this information in and kind of like make little tweaks for it by month. This is what the budget setup tab looks like when no information is in there. And as you can see here, the categories are going to be the same as the budget planner categories, but then in here, we're going to be able to create a budget by month. So the budget that I just created is kind of like my January budget, but let's say I know I have something coming up in March that's going to tweak my budget a little bit. This is the tab where I can kind of like tweak those numbers and set my budget by month. So I'm just going to literally copy and paste the information from the budget planner into the January column. Now that all of that information is copied in here, you can see all of the same information up here. You don't have to use the budget planner tab at all if you don't want to. If you like the budget setup tab, you can just go straight to that. But like I said, I like to be able to map everything out and kind of see it all in one tab and then copy it over. At this point, you can decide whether or not you want to copy it into the rest of the months, or if you just want to do it for January and then create your budget at the beginning of every single month. I'm going to leave it just in January for right now and see how January goes. And then if I need to make any tweaks before February, I will do that in about a month. That's really all I needed to do to set up my 2025 budget, and then I'll show you the other tabs of the template to just show you like how I'll work through this for 2025. First is the monthly tabs, and these are the tabs that I feel like I spend the most time in throughout the year. These are the tabs that I use to track my spending every single week. So like I said, I tracked every single dollar that I spent in 2024, and I plan on doing that exact same thing in 2025. So once a week I come into these monthly tabs and I just log all of my transactions into this transactions log. So what that looks like is I'll come in here and say on January 1st, I got paid my full salary because I get paid once a month. And then on the 1st, I also paid my rent for $2,300 automatically. So as the month goes on, I'll have this huge list of transactions. But what that does is the rest of this tab is just a ton of data on what I budgeted versus what I actually spent during that month. As you can see, all of these columns here, the planned or the expected columns, these are your budget. So this is what's populated in the budget setup tab. And then all of these actual columns are what you actually spent. So what's going on in the transactions log. So by the end of the month, you have this really nice cash flow summary of here's what I expected versus here's what actually happened, here's how much I actually made, and here's how much I actually spent. The next tab is the annual summary dashboard, which I mentioned at the beginning of this video. And this is the tab where you don't make any edits to this. This tab is strictly informational to see exactly how much you earned and then exactly how much you spent year to date. So let's say you've been using this template for a couple of months. You'll be able to come down here and see, okay, in the first 3 months of the year, I spent a total of $6,100 on my rent. Or at the end of 3 months, I made exactly $30,000 this year. And then the last tab is this financial goals tracker, or this is kind of like your account summary slash like net worth tracker almost. So we can fill this one out together because we're gonna fill out the starting column in this tab. Since I already filled out the budget setup tab in column B, these are already pre-populated with basically like my savings and my investment accounts, and then also my debt accounts if I had any. So all of those sinking funds that I set up here, my investment accounts, and then I'm able to go in and put my starting balance. So I have $2,400 in my moving account, $1,200 in my travel account, and I have $0 in my holiday account from this year. And then in my brokerage account, I have roughly $40,000. And then down here under other assets, I'm able to log any other accounts that I have that aren't necessarily a part of my monthly budget this year. I have $30,000 sitting in my emergency fund, so I'm not currently contributing to that account, so it's not in my budget. So I put it under other assets. Same thing with my solo 401k. I have roughly $70,000 in my solo 401k, so I can just come down here and list all of my accounts. Then for all of our savings, investments, and our debt, as we log savings and as we log investments throughout the months, these are going to automatically update. So let's say in the month of January, I saved $1,000 into my moving fund. That automatically updated here. So this is a good place to be able to track your account balances. This tab is just a good place to keep track of all of your accounts all in one place. So the annual dashboard is more about your income and your spending, and then the financial goals tracker is more about your savings, your investments, and your debt. I hope this video was helpful if you needed some inspiration to create your 2025 budget. This process is super quick. I feel like it intimidates a lot of people, but like I said, it was super quick and easy for me because I knew my numbers from 2024. I'll leave the link to my budget template in the description of this video, and thanks for following along to my channel.